She was a teacher, caring, dedicated, and full of hope. He was a principal, respected, polished, and hiding something monstrous. When she told him she was pregnant, he didn't propose. He didn't walk away. He paid someone to make sure she never spoke again. This was one of the cases that will stay with you long after it's over, because it's not just a crime story, it's a story about trust, betrayal, and the price one man was willing to make an innocent woman pay for his own secrets. If true crime stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe right now, drop a like, and let's make sure Jocelyn's story is never forgotten. Let's get into it. St. Louis, Missouri. On the surface, Cornelius Green had everything a man could want: a career, a reputation, respect from his community. As a school principal, he was the kind of figure parents trusted and students looked up to. He was supposed to be a leader, a protector, but behind that carefully constructed image, Cornelius Green was living an entirely different life. He was married and he was having a secret affair with one of his teachers, a young woman named Jocelyn Peters. Jocelyn was everything you'd want in an educator. She was warm, she was compassionate, she genuinely cared about the children in her classroom. People who knew her described her as someone who lit up her room, someone with a bright future and a bigger heart. She believed in Cornelius Green. She trusted him. And in the way that people sometimes do when they're deep inside a relationship they shouldn't be in, she held on to hope. She believed he would eventually leave his wife. She believed they had a future together. What she didn't know, what she never could have imagined, was that the person she loved had already decided she was a problem to be solved. Then came the news that changed everything. Jocelyn was pregnant. For her, this was not a problem. It was a turning point. Frightening, yes, but also filled with meaning. She wanted to keep the baby. She wanted to build something real. For Cornelius Green, it was a problem. Think about what was running through his mind in that moment. His affair, hidden for so long, was now about to become impossible to conceal. A child didn't stay a secret. A child asked questions. A child had a birth certificate. A child exists in the world in ways that cannot be erased or explained. His marriage, his career, his carefully maintained image as a pillar of the community, all of it, everything he had built, was suddenly balanced on a knife's edge. And instead of doing what any decent human being would do, instead of facing the consequences of his own choices, Cornelius Green began to think about something far darker. He began to think about how to make Jocelyn Peters disappear. What happened next was not a crime of passion. Let that sink in. This was not a moment of rage or temporary insanity. This was not someone who snapped under pressure. This was a calculated, deliberate, step-by-step murder plot, designed by a man who ran a school, a man whose job was to protect children. Green identified a man named Philip Coulter to carry out the killing, and to pay for it, he reached into a place that tells you everything you need to know about his character. He stole money from the school where he worked, the institution he led, the children he was supposed to serve. Then he built himself what he believed was an airtight alibi. He arranged to be out of town on the day of the murder. He allowed Coulter to use his own car. He coordinated the timing down to the details, constructing layers of distance between himself and what was about to happen. He thought he had thought of everything. On the day Cornelius Green was carefully positioning himself miles away, Philip Coulter went to Jocelyn Peters' house. She had no idea. She was inside, in the place where she was supposed to be safe. Coulter forced himself in. He was armed. A makeshift silencer had been used to muffle the gunshots. Jocelyn Peters was shot in her bedroom. She was killed, and the unborn child she was carrying, a child who never had the chance to take a single breath, died with her. Take a moment with that. 2 lives erased because one man decided that his reputation was worth more than their existence. Hours later, Cornelius Green arrived at Jocelyn's home. He called 911. He performed shock. He performed grief. He stood in front of investigators and played the role of a man who had just discovered something horrifying, when in reality he was the architect of the entire tragedy. But investigators are trained to notice what doesn't fit. The things didn't fit. The timeline raised questions. The financial records told a story he hadn't anticipated. Stolen school funds, traced and documented. The connection between Green and Coulter began to surface. His alibi, which had seemed to be so solid, started to develop cracks under sustained scrutiny. The investigation was patient and ultimately devastating for Cornelius Green. The truth came out. Cornelius Green pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to multiple life sentences for the murder of Jocelyn Peters and her unborn child. Peter Coulter, the man who pulled the trigger, also received a life sentence. Neither men will walk free. There is no Hollywood ending here. There is no moment where Jocelyn walks out of that home. There is no version of this story where those two lives are returned to the world. But there is this. The truth was found. The men responsible were held accountable, and the story of who Jocelyn Peters was, her kind, dedicated teacher who deserved so much better, is one that deserved to be told. Jocelyn Peters didn't die because of anything she did wrong. She died because she trusted someone who saw her life as an inconvenience. Cases like this remind us that evil doesn't always wear a visible face. Sometimes it wears a suit, sits behind the principal's desk, and smiles at the parents of children it claims to protect. If this story moved you, if you believe Jocelyn's memory deserves to be honoured, please like this story and share it. Every share keeps her story alive. Subscribe to Crime Flux so you never miss a case like this one. And in the comments, I want to hear from you. What does justice mean to you when the person responsible had every reason to know better? I'll see you in the next one.